What would you do if you spent 5 years paying your parents' mortgage only to watch them hand the house to your brother? As a wedding gift, I'm Erica, and I gave my family $180,000. Then they gave my inheritance away to someone else. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will take advantage of you the longest. But it's also the story of how I finally learned to say no. I spent 5 years paying my parents' mortgage. Then they gave the house to my brother at his wedding. I know what you're thinking. There has to be more to the story, right? Maybe I wasn't a good daughter. Maybe I was distant, ungrateful, the black sheep who deserved it. But here's the thing about family betrayal. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly, like water damage behind a wall. You don't see it until everything comes crashing down. My name is Erica, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is believing that blood means loyalty. Growing up in Westbury, Long Island, our house was the kind of place that looked perfect from the outside. A classic colonial with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a maple tree in the front yard that turned the most beautiful shade of red every October. My parents, Karen and Ronald, worked hard to maintain that middle-class dream. Dad was a regional sales manager, Mom worked part-time at the local bank. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Or at least, that's what I thought. The thing about favoritism is that it's rarely obvious when you're living it. It's in the small details. The way my younger brother Danny always got the bigger slice of cake. How his birthday parties were elaborate affairs with themed decorations and hired entertainers, while mine were simple family dinners with a store-bought cake. I remember when Danny turned 7, they rented a bouncy castle and invited his entire class. When I turned 7, Mom made spaghetti and we watched a movie. I asked why Danny got a party, and I didn't. "You're more mature, sweetheart," Mom said, ruffling my hair. "You don't need all that fuss." Even as a kid, I knew that wasn't really an answer, but I learned to accept it. I learned to be the easy child, the one who didn't ask for much, who understood when there wasn't enough to go around. The pattern continued as we got older. Danny got name-brand clothes while I wore hand-me-downs from our cousin. He got the latest video games while I checked books out from the library. When he wanted to quit piano lessons after 2 months, that was fine. When I wanted to quit violin after 3 years of dedicated practice, I was told we'd already invested too much money. But the moment that really crystallized everything was our 16th birthdays. I'll never forget it. The morning of my 16th birthday, I woke up expecting something different. Maybe not a car, because I knew we couldn't afford that, but something that acknowledged I was growing up, that I mattered. Instead, I got a pep talk. Dad sat me down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, which felt grown up at the time. "Erica," he said, "you're becoming a young woman now. You're smart, responsible, and you have your whole life ahead of you. Your mother and I are proud of how independent you are." Independent? Even then, I knew that was code for, "You don't need as much attention as your brother." He handed me a card with $50 inside and a speech about how I was mature enough to handle responsibility, how I could get a part-time job if I wanted spending money, how education was the best gift they could give me. 3 months later, Danny turned 16. I watched from my bedroom window as they surprised him with a used Honda Civic. Not new, but clean and reliable. I watched him scream with joy, watched Mom take pictures, watched Dad clap him on the back with pride. When I asked why Danny got a car and I got a lecture about responsibility, Mom said, "Danny needs more help getting to his activities. You're so independent, you'll figure it out." There it was again. Independent. The word that meant I was on my own. So I figured it out. I got a job at the local grocery store bagging groceries. I saved every penny. I applied for scholarships. I studied until my eyes burned. I figured it out just like they said I would. When it came time for college, I had enough scholarships to cover most of NYU's tuition. I worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. I delivered newspapers at 5 in the morning, tutored kids after classes, and worked weekends at a campus coffee shop. Danny, meanwhile, went to community college for 2 years before dropping out to pursue his passion. First, he wanted to be a videographer, then a yoga instructor, then he started a podcast about mindfulness that lasted exactly 12 episodes. Each career change was met with the same response from our parents. He's still finding himself, they'd say. He's creative. He just needs time to figure out his path. By the time I graduated with my finance degree, Danny was calling himself a lifestyle influencer. He had maybe 300 followers on Instagram, but our parents talked about his brand like he was the next big thing. I landed a job at a respected financial advisory firm in Manhattan. I was making good money building a client base, working toward my real estate license on the side. I was successful by any reasonable measure, but somehow, Danny's $100 brand deals for energy drinks felt more celebrated at family dinners than my promotion to senior advisor. The call came on a Tuesday in March. I was at work reviewing a client's portfolio when my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. "Erica, honey, I need to talk to you about something important." His voice had that careful tone that meant bad news was coming. I stepped into an empty conference room. "I lost my job," he said just like that. No build-up, no preparation. "The company downsized. They gave me a severance package, but it's not going to last long." I felt my stomach drop. "Dad, I'm so sorry. What about Mom? She's been on partial disability since her back surgery. You know that. We're getting by, but..." There was a long pause. In that silence, I could hear everything he wasn't saying. "How bad is it?" I asked. "We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank is starting to make noise about foreclosure proceedings." 3 months. They'd been struggling for 3 months and hadn't said anything. I thought about all the family dinners, all the times they'd insisted on paying for my meal even though I'd offered to cover it. All the times they'd said everything was fine. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "We didn't want to worry you. We thought we could handle it." But they couldn't handle it. And now they were asking me to handle it for them. "What do you need?" I asked, even though I already knew. "The mortgage is $2,800 a month. If we can catch up on the back payments and keep current going forward, we can save the house. But Erica, I need you to know this isn't forever, just until I find something new. And when we're gone, the house is yours. It's always been meant for you. It's always been meant for you." Those words hit me like a promise. Like finally, after all these years of being the responsible one, the independent one, the one who figured things out on her own, I was going to be rewarded for it. I did the math in my head. $2,800 a month was a significant chunk of my income, but I could manage it. I'd been saving for a down payment on my own place, but family came first. Family always came first. "Okay," I said. "I'll help." "Are you sure I don't want you to sacrifice your own future?" "Dad, it's not a sacrifice. It's an investment. In the family. In my future." "You're a good daughter, Erica. I don't know what we'd do without you." I hung up feeling proud. Useful. Like finally, I was the child they needed most. I transferred the money that afternoon. Enough to cover the 3 months they were behind, plus the current month. Over $11,000 from my savings account gone in an instant. But it felt good. It felt like I was finally doing something that mattered. I called Mom that evening to let her know the transfer had gone through. "Oh, honey, thank you so much. You don't know what this means to us." "Of course, Mom. We're family. Your father and I were just saying how lucky we are to have such a responsible daughter." There was that word again. Responsible, but this time it felt different. This time it felt like praise. I was still on the phone with Mom when I heard the front door open in the background. Danny's voice loud and excited. "Mom, Dad, you'll never guess what happened. I just signed a deal with this new athletic wear company. They're sending me a whole care package of shoes and workout gear. This could be my big break." I heard Mom's attention shift instantly. "Oh, that's wonderful, honey. Tell us everything." "Erica, I have to go," she said to me. Danny just got home with some exciting news. But Mom, don't. We need to talk about the mortgage situation. How we're going to handle this going forward. Oh, we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. You're so good at handling these things. The line went dead. I sat there holding my phone, listening to the dial tone, and I felt something shift inside me. Something small, but significant. Like the first crack in a foundation. But I pushed the feeling down. This was about family. This was about doing the right thing. This was about securing my future. I had no idea I was about to pay for a house that would never be mine. 2 years. That's how long I paid my parents' mortgage before I started to see the cracks in their story. $2,800 a month every month like clockwork. But it wasn't just the mortgage. There was always something else. The water heater broke and needed replacing. The property taxes went up. The homeowner's insurance increased. A tree fell in the backyard and damaged the fence. Each time the same conversation. A stressed phone call from Dad, an apologetic explanation, and another transfer from my account to theirs. By the end of those 2 years, I was spending nearly $4,000 a month keeping that house afloat. My best friend Jasmine had been watching this unfold with growing concern. We'd meet for drinks after work, and she'd ask the same question every time. Erica, when was the last time you bought yourself something nice? I'd shrug it off. I don't need much. I'm saving for my future. Are you, though? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're paying for your parents' present while your own life is on hold. Jasmine worked in corporate law. She had a way of cutting through emotional bullshit that I both loved and hated. She'd been telling me for months that something didn't add up. This isn't support, she said one evening over wine. This is silent exploitation. I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to defend my family, to explain that they were just going through a rough patch that they'd pay me back when they could. But the numbers didn't lie. In 2 years, I'd given them over $70,000, and their financial situation seemed to be getting worse, not better. The warning signs were everywhere, but I was trained not to see them. Like when I'd invite my parents to dinner at nice restaurants, and they'd decline saying they couldn't afford it right now. Times are tight, honey. We need to watch every penny. But then I'd see Mom's Facebook posts, pictures of her and Dad at steakhouses with Danny, the 3 of them at wine tastings, family bowling nights that I somehow never heard about until I saw the photos online. When I'd ask about it, the explanation was always the same. Danny insisted on treating us. We couldn't say no. You know how sensitive he is about money. Sensitive about money. Danny, who had never held a job for longer than 6 months, was sensitive about money. Meanwhile, I was hemorrhaging cash to keep them housed, and I was supposed to understand why they couldn't have dinner with me, but could let my unemployed brother pick up their restaurant tabs. The utility bills were another red flag I chose to ignore. I came home one day to find a stack of mail that had been delivered to my apartment by mistake. Same street name, different number. I was about to drive them over to the correct address when I noticed one of the envelopes was addressed to Erica Mitchell at my parents' address. My name, their address, a bill I'd never seen before. I opened it. Electric bill for the house, 3 months overdue, $850. I called Mom immediately. Why is there an electric bill in my name for your house? Oh, that. We had to switch the utilities to your name for credit reasons. Just temporarily. I thought we mentioned it. They hadn't mentioned it. And when I checked my credit report that night, I found 2 more utility accounts I'd never authorized. All for their house. All in my name. All behind on payments. But somehow I convinced myself this was normal. This was what families did for each other. This was temporary. Then, Danny got engaged. I found out the same way everyone else did. Through an Instagram post. A picture of him on one knee in Central Park proposing to his girlfriend Alex. The caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait to start this next chapter with my best friend and the love of my life." 67 likes. My parents had commented with crying, happy face emojis. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't even told it was happening. I called to congratulate him, trying to sound excited. Danny, this is wonderful news. When did you start planning this? Oh, I've been working on it for months. Alex has no idea. Mom and Dad helped me pick out the ring. Of course they did. I wondered who paid for it, but I didn't ask. I was afraid of the answer. The engagement party was held at a country club in the Hamptons. Alex's family had money, real money, and they wanted to celebrate properly. I drove out from the city wearing a dress I'd bought on sale 3 months earlier, feeling underdressed and out of place. The venue was beautiful. String lights hanging over a manicured garden servers, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Alex's family mingled effortlessly with other well-dressed guests while I stood near the bar nursing a single glass of wine and trying to calculate how much this party was costing. I watched my parents work the room like they belonged there. Dad in a suit I'd never seen before. Mom in a new dress with jewelry that sparkled under the lights. They looked successful, comfortable, like people who weren't 3 months behind on their mortgage just 2 years ago. I was standing near the gift table when I overheard Mom talking to a group of Alex's relatives. "We're so thrilled about this engagement," she was saying. "We have such a special surprise planned for the wedding. Something meaningful, something that represents putting down roots." One of Alex's aunts leaned in conspiratorially. "Oh, how exciting. What kind of surprise?" Mom glanced around and lowered her voice, but not enough. "Let's just say it involves the family home, a gift that will help them start their life together properly." The family home. My blood went cold. The house I'd been paying for. The house that was supposed to be mine someday. I wanted to march over there and demand an explanation, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen by the gift table, watching my mother beam with pride as she talked about giving away the house I'd been funding for 2 years. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she was talking about something else. Maybe I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. I knew with the kind of certainty that sits in your stomach like a stone. 2 weeks later, Dad called with another emergency. "The roof is leaking in 3 places. We need to get it fixed before it causes structural damage. The contractor says it'll be about $6,000. $6,000. On top of the regular mortgage payment. On top of the utility bills in my name. On top of everything else. Dad, I need to see an estimate. This is a lot of money." "Of course, honey. I'll send it over as soon as I get home." I never saw an estimate, but I transferred the money anyway because that's what I always did. That's what good daughters do. A week later, I drove out to Long Island to visit. I wanted to see the roof work to make sure my money was being used properly. I pulled into the driveway and immediately noticed there was no contractor truck, no ladder, no sign of any construction work at all. I knocked on the front door, but no one answered. I could hear voices in the backyard, so I walked around the side of the house. There they were, Mom, Dad, Danny, and Alex sitting around the patio table with what looked like a wedding planner. The table was covered with cake samples, flowers, and fabric swatches. They were planning the wedding, and they were planning it with my roof repair money. I stood there behind the fence, watching my family plan a celebration, with money I'd given them under false pretenses, and something inside me finally broke. I didn't confront them. I didn't make a scene. I just got back in my car and drove home to the city. That night, I called Jasmine. "You were right," I said. "About what?" "They're using me." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, Erica. I really hoped I was wrong." "What do I do now?" "That's up to you, but whatever you decide, make sure you're protecting yourself, because they're not going to." I hung up and sat in my apartment, looking out at the city lights, trying to figure out how I'd become an ATM for people who were supposed to love me. The wedding was 3 months away, and I had a feeling the worst was yet to come. The 3 months leading up to Danny's wedding were the loneliest months of my life, and I was surrounded by family the entire time. It started with the dress shopping. I found out about it the same way I found out about most things in my family through social media. Mom posted pictures from the bridal boutique, her Danny, Alex, and Alex's mother and sister all holding champagne glasses and laughing as Alex tried on gowns. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told it was happening. When I asked Mom about it later, she had her excuse ready. Oh, honey, we know how busy you are with work. We didn't want to impose. Plus, Alex wanted to keep it small. Just immediate family. Immediate family. I was immediate family when they needed mortgage payments, but not when they were shopping for wedding dresses. The same thing happened with the venue tours, the cake tastings, the florist meetings. Every wedding decision was made without me, but I heard about each one through carefully curated social media posts or casual mentions during our monthly family dinners. The venue is gorgeous, Mom would say. You're going to love it. Alex has such amazing taste. When do I get to see it? I'd ask. Oh, you'll see it at the wedding. It'll be such a nice surprise. A surprise. Like I was a distant relative they were obligated to invite, not the daughter who'd been keeping their house out of foreclosure for 2 years. The most insulting part was how they framed my exclusion as consideration for my busy schedule. We know you're so focused on your career right now, Dad would say. We didn't want to burden you with wedding planning stress. But somehow, I wasn't too busy to receive passive-aggressive reminders about my obligations. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a text from Mom at 7 in the morning. Don't forget to pick up your bridesmaid dress. The alterations should be done by now. Alex is getting nervous about everyone being ready on time. Bridesmaid dress. I stared at that text for 5 minutes trying to process it. I was a bridesmaid, but I hadn't been involved in choosing the dress, hadn't been measured with the other girls, hadn't even been told what color to expect. I drove to the bridal shop that afternoon, feeling like I was picking up a costume for a play I'd never auditioned for. The dress was a dusty rose color that washed out my skin tone completely. It fit barely, but it was clear that whoever had ordered it had guessed at my measurements. Your sister-in-law-to-be has wonderful taste, the shop assistant said as she rang up the alterations. This whole wedding party is going to look stunning. Sister-in-law-to-be. Even strangers knew more about my role in this wedding than I did. The wedding day arrived with all the pomp and circumstance that Alex's family money could buy. The venue was a historic mansion in the Hamptons, complete with manicured gardens, a string quartet, and enough flowers to fill a botanical garden. I arrived early because that's what responsible people do. I was standing in the bridal suite watching Alex's actual friends and sisters fuss over her hair and makeup when Danny knocked on the door. Erica, can I talk to you for a minute? We stepped out into the hallway, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Danny looked nervous. Not his usual confident, everything will work out fine attitude. He looked genuinely scared. I can't do this, he said, running his hands through his carefully styled hair. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not ready? What if I can't give her the life she deserves? For a moment, he wasn't the golden child who got everything handed to him. He was just my little brother, scared and needing support. Danny, you're going to be fine, I said, smoothing down his hair where he'd messed it up. Alex loves you. That's all that matters. But what if it's not enough? What if I disappoint her like I've disappointed everyone else? You haven't disappointed anyone. Mom and Dad are so proud of you. What about you? He asked. Am I disappointing you? It was such an unexpected question. So vulnerable. So unlike him. For a second, I almost told him the truth. Almost told him about the mortgage payments, about feeling invisible, about watching my savings disappear while he lived his carefree life. But he was getting married in an hour. This wasn't the time. You're my brother, I said instead. I just want you to be happy. He hugged me then, and for a moment it felt like we were kids again, before the favoritism became so obvious, before I learned that love in our family came with conditions. Thank you, Erica, for everything. I know I don't say it enough, but I know how much you do for the family." I almost asked him what he meant by that. Did he know about the mortgage? Did he know I'd been funding their life for 2 years? But before I could ask, Alex's maid of honor appeared in the hallway. "Danny, you can't see the bride before the ceremony. It's bad luck." And just like that, the moment was over. Danny was whisked away, and I was left standing in the hallway wondering if that was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I was ever going to get. The ceremony was beautiful. Picture perfect. Danny looked handsome in his tuxedo, Alex was radiant in her designer gown, and the setting sun cast everything in golden light. I stood with the other bridesmaids, smiling on cue, while my parents watched their son marry into money. Because that's what this was really about. I could see it in the way guests whispered to each other during the cocktail hour. "He's marrying into such money. Alex's family owns that restaurant chain, you know. Lucky boy, he'll never have to worry about anything again." Lucky boy. Danny, who had never held a steady job, who had been supported by his parents his entire life, who was now marrying someone whose family could provide the lifestyle he'd always expected but never earned. Lucky boy indeed. The reception was a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, a 10-piece band, and enough champagne to float a yacht. I sat at the family table watching everyone celebrate while feeling like I was watching it all through glass. Then came the speeches. Dad stood up first, tapping his champagne glass with a fork until the room quieted down. He looked distinguished in his tuxedo, every inch the proud father of the groom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate the marriage of my son Danny to his beautiful bride Alex." The crowd applauded. Dad smiled, waiting for the noise to die down before continuing. "Karen and I have watched Danny grow into the remarkable young man he is today, and we couldn't be prouder. He's always been special, always been destined for great things. Always been special." I took a sip of wine and tried to keep my expression neutral. Tonight, as Danny and Alex start their new life together, Karen and I wanted to do something meaningful, something that would give them the foundation they need to build their future. My stomach started to clench. There was something in Dad's tone, something that made me sit up straighter in my chair. Marriage is about building a life together, about creating a home where love can grow. And that's exactly what we want to help them do. He paused, looking out at the crowd with the kind of smile that comes right before a big announcement. "So, tonight, Karen and I are thrilled to announce that we're gifting Danny and Alex our family home. The house where Danny grew up, where we made so many beautiful memories. We want them to fill it with their own memories, their own family, their own dreams." The room erupted in applause. Guests cheered and raised their glasses. Danny and Alex looked shocked and delighted, hugging each other, and then rushing to hug Mom and Dad. I sat frozen in my chair, wine glass halfway to my lips, while the world exploded around me. Our family home. The house I had been paying for. The house that was supposed to be mine someday. The house I had saved from foreclosure with my own money. I paid every bill for that house, I whispered to myself. But my words were lost in the celebration. People were standing, clapping, wiping away tears. I could see Alex's parents nodding approvingly, impressed by this generous gesture from the groom's family. What a wonderful gift. What loving parents. What a perfect way to start a marriage. Nobody knew that I had paid for that gift. Nobody knew that my savings account had been emptied to make this moment possible. Nobody knew that I was sitting there watching my inheritance, my security, my future being handed to someone else, with a smile and a champagne toast. Danny was crying. Actual tears of joy as he hugged Dad and whispered something in his ear. I watched my little brother, the one I just calmed down in the hallway, accept the house I'd been paying for like it was his birthright. Because to him, it was. To all of them, it was. I excused myself during the cake cutting. I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't sit there and smile while they celebrated with my money and my house at my expense. I found a quiet spot in the garden away from the music and laughter. I sat on a stone bench and finally let myself cry. Not the loud, dramatic crying of someone having a breakdown, just quiet tears of realization, of understanding finally where I stood in my family. I cried for the 16-year-old who got a lecture instead of a car, for the college student who worked 3 jobs while her brother found himself, for the woman who spent 2 years funding a dream that was never meant to include her. I cried for the daughter who thought that being responsible meant being valued, who thought that sacrifice meant respect, who thought that family meant forever. When I finally stopped crying, I felt empty, but also strangely clear. I drove home to my apartment in Brooklyn and did what any good financial advisor would do. I got out my laptop and started calculating. $2,800 a month for 2 years, $67,200. The back payments when I first started helping, $11,300. The roof repair that turned into wedding planning, $6,000. The utility bills in my name, $4,700. The random emergencies, the property taxes, the insurance payments, another $12,000. Total, $101,200. $101,200 of my money had just been given away to my brother as a wedding gift. I closed my laptop and sat in my dark apartment, finally understanding what Jasmine had been trying to tell me for months. I wasn't supporting my family. I was funding my own betrayal. I spent the week after the wedding in a strange state of clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to solve someone else's financial crisis. I wasn't checking my phone for emergency texts from Dad, or calculating how much I could afford to transfer this month. Instead, I was doing something I should have done years ago. I was adding up the real cost of being the responsible daughter. My initial calculation of $100,000 was just the tip of the iceberg. I had been focusing on the big payments, the obvious ones. But when I really dug into my bank statements, when I traced every transfer, every emergency fund dip every time I'd covered something for the family, the number kept growing. 5 years. Not 2 like I'd been telling myself. I'd been financially supporting my parents for 5 full years, starting with smaller amounts in college when Dad first mentioned having trouble making ends meet. The laptop screen glowed in my dark apartment as I worked through spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Every birthday gift I'd bought for family dinners I wasn't invited to. Every Christmas when I'd given generous cash gifts while receiving thoughtful but inexpensive presents in return. Every time I'd picked up the check at restaurants because you're doing so well for yourself. When I finally finished, the number staring back at me was $180,000. $180,000. More than most people make in 3 years. More than the down payment on a luxury apartment in Manhattan. More than enough to have changed my entire life trajectory if I'd invested it instead of giving it away. I called in sick to work the next day and made an appointment with a lawyer. I needed to know if I had any legal recourse, any way to get back what was mine. Richard Steinberg's office overlooked Central Park. He was the kind of lawyer who charged by the hour and made you feel like every minute counted. I explained the situation as clearly as I could, showed him my financial records, the documentation of every payment. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and delivered the verdict I was afraid to hear. Ms. Mitchell, I understand your frustration, and what happened to you is morally reprehensible. But legally, you don't have a case. What do you mean? You made voluntary payments. No contract specified repayment terms. No written agreement established your claim to the property. In the eyes of the law, these were gifts. But my father said the house would be mine someday. Verbal promises about inheritance are rarely enforceable, especially when the property has been formally transferred to another party. Your brother now legally owns that house. Your parents had every right to give it to him. Gifts. 5 years of sacrifice reduced to gifts in the eyes of the law. Is there anything I can do? You could try to pursue a civil suit claiming fraud or misrepresentation, but it would be expensive, time-consuming, and unlikely to succeed. My advice: cut your losses and move forward. Cut your losses. Like my family was a bad investment that hadn't paid off. I left his office, feeling defeated, but also strangely liberated. There was no legal remedy, no court that could restore what I'd lost. But there was something I could control. I could stop the bleeding. That afternoon, I called Samantha Chen, a financial planner I'd met at a networking event. I needed professional advice from someone who wasn't emotionally invested in my family drama. We met at a coffee shop in Midtown. Samantha had built her practice helping women regain control of their finances after major life changes. Divorce, death, financial abuse, she'd seen it all. "Let me make sure I understand," she said, after I'd explained the situation. "You've been paying for a house that was just given to someone else, and you're asking me whether you should continue paying for it." When she put it like that, the answer seemed obvious. "I know how it sounds, but they're still my parents. What if they really can't afford the payments without my help? Erica, they just gave away a house worth, what, $400,000? $500. If they were truly struggling financially, they would have sold it and downsized. Instead, they gave it to your brother as a wedding gift. That tells me everything I need to know about their actual financial situation." She was right, and I knew it. But knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are two different things. Stop paying. Protect yourself. Put that money into your own retirement account, your own real estate, your own future. You've taken care of them long enough. Now it's time to take care of you. I drove out to Long Island that Saturday. I needed to have the conversation I'd been avoiding for years. I needed to draw a line in the sand. The house looked the same as always, white shutters, wraparound porch, that maple tree in the front yard. But now, I knew it belonged to Danny and Alex. Now, I knew I was visiting someone else's property funded by my own money. Mom answered the door with her usual smile. "Erica, what a nice surprise. We were just having coffee. Come in, come in." The living room where I'd grown up looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I just saw it differently now. The couch I'd helped them buy 3 years ago when the old one fell apart. The coffee table I'd assembled during one of my weekend visits. The TV I'd upgraded for them last Christmas. Even here, surrounded by things I'd paid for, I was still just a visitor. Dad looked up from his newspaper. "How are you, sweetheart? Did you have a good time at the wedding?" "A good time." I almost laughed. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. The wedding and the house and everything that's been happening." Something in my tone must have alerted them, because both of their expressions shifted. The casual warmth was replaced by wariness. "What about it?" Mom asked. "I've been paying your mortgage for 5 years. I've given you $180,000, and now you've given the house to Danny." Silence. The kind of silence that fills a room like smoke, making it hard to breathe. Finally, Dad spoke. "We never asked you to keep track." "You never asked me to keep track." "You were helping out of love," Mom said, her voice turning cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Family helps family. We didn't think you were keeping receipts." Keeping receipts. Like wanting acknowledgement for sacrificing my financial future was petty accounting. "But you told me the house would be mine someday." Dad shrugged. Actually, shrugged like he was dismissing a stranger's complaint. "It's our house, Erica. It was always ours. We had every right to decide what to do with it. But I paid for it." "You helped us keep it," Mom corrected. "There's a difference." "What about all the times you said I was investing in my future? What about all the promises that this was temporary?" "Plans change," Dad said. "Danny needed help to getting started. Alex's family has expectations. This made sense for everyone. Everyone except me. It was always supposed to be mine." I said, hating how my voice cracked when I said it. "You're being dramatic," Mom said. "You have a good job, a nice apartment. You don't need the house the way Danny does." There it was. the truth beneath all the excuses. I didn't need the house because I was capable of taking care of myself. Danny needed it because he wasn't, and my competence had become my punishment. I won't be making any more payments, I said. The words hung in the air between us. What do you mean? Mom asked. I mean, I'm done. No more mortgage payments, no more emergency funds, no more covering your expenses. I'm done. You can't be serious, Dad said. I'm completely serious. Erica, we're your parents, Mom said, her voice rising. You can't just abandon us. Abandon them. After 5 years of sacrifice, choosing to stop funding their lifestyle was abandonment. I'm not abandoning you. I'm protecting myself. From what? From this. From being used. From giving everything I have to people who see it as their due. That's not fair, Mom said. What's not fair is that I worked 3 jobs in college while Danny found himself. What's not fair is that I've been paying your bills while you took him out to dinner. What's not fair is that I funded the house you just gave away as a wedding gift. We raised you better than this, Dad said. You raised me to believe that my worth was measured by how much I could give while asking for nothing in return. Well, congratulations. It worked. I stood up to leave. I love you both, but I won't be your ATM anymore. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to welcome you back, Mom said. I turned around and looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who had taught me that love meant sacrifice, that family meant obligation, that being needed was the same as being valued. I wouldn't dream of it, I said. I closed the bank accounts they had access to. I removed my name from their utility bills. I changed my phone number and updated my address with all financial institutions. For the first time in 5 years, my money was going into my own accounts, my own future, my own life. Jasmine helped me move the last of my belongings out of storage and into my apartment. How does it feel? She asked. Terrifying, I admitted. And free. Good. You've taken care of them long enough. Now you get to take care of you. The call started 3 days later. Dad, first, then Mom, then both of them together. The mortgage payment was due and they couldn't cover it. Surely I didn't mean to let the house go into foreclosure. Surely I wasn't really going to abandon them in their time of need. I didn't answer. The calls became daily, then twice daily. Voicemails that started pleading and gradually turned angry. How dare I turn my back on family? How dare I be so selfish? How dare I forget everything they'd done for me? After 2 weeks, the calls stopped. I thought maybe they'd found another solution. Maybe they'd figured out how to manage on their own. Then they showed up at my door. It was a Sunday morning. I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, enjoying the quiet of my own space when the buzzer rang. I looked through the peephole and saw them standing in the hallway. Mom clutching her purse like a shield, Dad looking older than I remembered. I didn't open the door. Erica, we know you're in there, Mom called through the door. We need to talk. Please, sweetheart, Dad added. Just 5 minutes. I stood on the other side of that door, listening to my parents beg for my attention, and felt nothing but sadness. Not for their situation, but for the relationship we'd never really had. The daughter they'd never really seen. There's nothing to talk about, I said through the door. The bank called, Mom said. They're starting foreclosure proceedings. Then you should call Danny. It's his house now. He can't afford the payments. That's not my problem anymore. I heard Mom start to cry. It should have broken my heart. A year ago it would have, but I'd finally learned the difference between manipulation and genuine emotion. Please, Dad said. We made a mistake. We can fix this. How? We'll figure something out. We'll make it right. Will you take the house back from Danny? Silence. Will you acknowledge that I've been supporting you for 5 years? More silence. Will you apologize for lying to me about where my money was going? We never lied, Mom said. And there it was. They would rather lose their house than admit what they'd done to me. Then we have nothing to talk about. I walked away from the door and turned up the music until I couldn't hear them anymore. When I looked out the window an hour later, they were gone. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and called Jasmine. "How do you feel?" she asked. Like I just survived something I didn't know was killing me. "Good. That's exactly what you did." 6 months after I stopped paying my parents' mortgage, I did something I hadn't done in years. I bought myself something beautiful, just because I wanted it. It was a brownstone in Park Slope. 3 stories, original hardwood floors, and a garden in the back where I could drink my morning coffee in peace. It needed work, but it was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. For the first time in my adult life, I was living in a space that nobody else had a claim to. Nobody could walk through my door and announce they were giving it away as a wedding gift. Nobody could put utility bills in my name without asking. Nobody could treat my home like a backup plan for their own poor decisions. The first night I slept there, I lay awake in my empty bedroom, listening to the sounds of my new neighborhood. Car doors closing, couples walking home from dinner, the distant hum of the subway. Normal sounds of a normal life that I was finally allowed to live. I started dating again. Not seriously at first, just casual dinners and drinks with men I met through work or friends. I'd forgotten how nice it was to have conversations that didn't revolve around someone else's financial crisis. To go to restaurants and order what I wanted without calculating whether I could afford both dinner and my family's emergency fund. Michael was the first one who noticed the change in me. We'd been seeing each other for about 3 months when he mentioned it. "You seem different lately," he said over dinner. "More relaxed, more present." "What do you mean? When we first started dating, you were always checking your phone. Always seemed like you were waiting for bad news. Now you actually seem to enjoy yourself." He was right. I had been waiting for bad news. For 5 years, my phone had been a weapon that my family could use to access my bank account at any time. Emergency after emergency, crisis after crisis, all requiring immediate financial intervention from responsible Erica. Now, my phone was just a phone. When it rang, it was friends making plans or work colleagues with actual work questions. Normal phone calls for a normal life. I launched a side business helping women navigate real estate purchases. Too many of my female friends had horror stories about being dismissed by male agents, about being shown smaller apartments than they'd requested because women don't usually want to spend that much, about being pressured into neighborhoods they couldn't afford or didn't want. I knew what it felt like to have your financial autonomy undermined. I knew what it felt like to be told you didn't deserve the space you'd paid for. My clients deserved better. The business grew faster than I'd expected. Word of mouth in professional women's networks is powerful, and apparently there was a real need for someone who understood that buying property wasn't just about square footage and mortgage rates. It was about claiming space in the world, about putting down roots that nobody else could pull up. I bought a small cottage in the Hamptons, not as an investment property, not as a family retreat that everyone else could use whenever they wanted. Just for me. A place where I could go on weekends to read books and take long walks on the beach and remember what it felt like to be alone with my own thoughts. The cottage had been in my name for exactly 2 weeks when the voicemail started again. "Erica, it's Dad. I hope you're doing well. Listen, I hate to bother you, but we may need a place to stay for a while. Just temporarily. The bank is moving forward with the foreclosure, and we need to be out by the end of the month. I know you have that place in the Hamptons now. Maybe we could work something out. Call me back." I deleted the message without calling back. 3 days later, an email from Mom. The subject line read, "Family emergency." "Erica, I don't know why you're not returning your father's calls, but this is serious. We're going to lose the house. Danny and Alex can't help. They're still newlyweds trying to get established. Alex's family thinks they should handle their own problems. We have nowhere else to turn. I know you have space now. The cottage would be perfect for us just until we get back on our feet. Also, please think about your father's blood pressure. All this stress isn't good for him. Call me as soon as you get this." I read the email twice, marveling at how they'd managed to make their homelessness my fault in just 6 sentences. The cottage would be perfect for them. Of course it would. Everything I'd ever owned had been perfect for someone else's needs. But not anymore. I didn't respond to the email either. 2 weeks later, they showed up at my brownstone. I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang. I looked through the window and saw them standing on my front steps, each carrying a suitcase. This time I opened the door. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," Mom said. Her eyes were red and she looked older than she had 6 months ago. "May we come in?" I stepped aside and let them into my living room. They looked around like they were cataloging everything, calculating its value, assessing what they could claim. "This is a beautiful place," Dad said. "You've done well for yourself." "What do you want?" "We lost the house," Mom said and started crying. "We're staying in a motel right now, but we can't afford it much longer. We need help, Erica. We need a place to stay." "What about Danny?" "He says the house is too small for 4 people," Dad said. "And Alex's family thinks we should figure out our own living situation." Of course they did. Alex's family understood boundaries. They understood that newlyweds didn't need to house the groom's parents indefinitely. They understood what my family had never grasped, that love doesn't mean unlimited access to someone else's resources. "I'm sorry you're in this situation," I said. "But I can't help you." "Can't or won't?" Mom asked. "Won't." "We're your parents," she said, her voice rising. "We raised you, we fed you and clothed you and put a roof over your head. And I paid you back with interest, $180,000 worth. That wasn't a loan," Dad said. "That was you helping family." "And this isn't me being cruel," I replied. "This is me protecting myself." Mom cried harder. "We made mistakes, okay? We admit that. But we're desperate, Erica. We have nowhere else to go. You made your decision when you gave the house to Danny. You don't get to undo it now just because it didn't work out the way you planned." I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd prepared weeks ago, knowing this conversation was inevitable. It contained printouts of rental listings and their price range information about senior housing options and contact details for social services that could help them navigate their options. "Here," I said, handing Mom the folder. "These are some places you can afford on Dad's Social Security and Mom's disability payments. Some of them are quite nice." She stared at the folder like I'd handed her an eviction notice. "You're really not going to help us," Dad said. It wasn't a question. "I helped you for 5 years. I gave you everything I had and you gave it all to Danny. I'm done helping." "This isn't who you are," Mom said. "This isn't the daughter we raised." "You're right," I said. "The daughter you raised would have emptied her savings account again. She would have given you the cottage and found herself another studio apartment in Queens. She would have worked 3 jobs to keep you comfortable while sacrificing her own future. But that daughter is gone." "What happened to you?" Mom whispered. "I grew up. I realized that being needed isn't the same as being loved. I realized that sacrifice without recognition isn't virtue, it's exploitation. I realized that I matter, too." Dad stood up abruptly. "Come on, Karen, we're wasting our time here." Mom looked at me one more time, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not disappointment or hurt, but something colder, something final. "You're not the daughter I raised," she said. "Thank God for that," I replied. They left without another word. Dad stormed down my front steps without looking back. Mom followed more slowly, clutching the folder of rental listings like it might burn her. I watched them get into their car this time without offering to help with their luggage or asking where they were staying that night. I watched them drive away from my beautiful brownstone, away from my beautiful life, away from the daughter who had finally learned to say no. When their car disappeared around the corner, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Jasmine. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. "Finally, completely free." "Any regrets?" I thought about it. About the family dinners I'd never attend again, the holiday cards I'd stop receiving, the grandchildren I might never meet. "No," I said. "No regrets. Because for the first time in my life, I was living for myself. and it felt like coming home. 18 months passed before I heard from my father again. I was at my favorite coffee shop in Park Slope working on my laptop when I looked up and saw him standing by the counter. He looked smaller than I remembered, grayer. There was something in his posture that reminded me of how Danny had looked the morning of his wedding. Uncertain, fragile. He bought a coffee and approached my table hesitantly. "Erica, would it be okay if I sat down?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me. He sat down carefully, like someone who wasn't sure he was welcome. "How did you know I'd be here?" "I didn't. I've been coming here hoping to run into you. This is my fourth try." Fourth try, he'd been looking for me. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm good. Really good." "How are you and Mom?" "We're managing. We found a small apartment in Queens. It's not much, but it's affordable." He paused, stirring his coffee even though he hadn't added anything to it. "Erica, I owe you an apology." "Harsa, I'd imagined this conversation 100 times, but I'd never imagined it starting like this." "I've been seeing a therapist," he continued. "Dr. Martinez. She's helping me understand some things about myself, about our family, about what we did to you." "What you did to me? We used you. For years we used you and told ourselves it was normal. Because you were capable. Because you could handle it, because you didn't complain." His voice cracked slightly. "I let your mother push you into a role that wasn't fair, and I didn't push back because it was easier than confronting the truth." "What truth?" "That we were failing, that we couldn't provide for Danny the way we wanted to without taking from you, that we were living beyond our means and using you to subsidize a lifestyle we couldn't afford." It was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged what had really been happening. "Your mother always pushed," he said. "From the time you were little, she had these ideas about how things should be. Danny was her baby, her last chance to have the kind of child she'd dreamed about. Creative, free-spirited, unconcerned with practical things. And you were so responsible, so capable. She convinced herself that you were better off being independent." "And what did you think?" "I thought it was easier to go along with it than to fight about it. I thought you seemed fine. You never complained, you never asked for help. So I told myself you didn't need it." He looked directly at me for the first time since sitting down. "I was wrong. You needed parents who saw you as more than a solution to their problems." We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the coffee shop buzzed with normal Saturday morning activity. People reading newspapers, couples sharing pastries, friends catching up over lattes. The kind of ordinary life I'd built for myself. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand what we did now. And I'm sorry." "What about Mom?" "She's struggling with it. The therapy, the changes. She's not ready to admit what happened yet." "And Danny," Dad's expression grew even sadder. "Danny's having his own problems. The marriage isn't going well. Alex's family never accepted him the way they thought they would. He's starting to realize that the life we promised him isn't sustainable." "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you—" I considered the question honestly. "I'm sorry he's hurting. I'm not sorry that his free ride is ending." Dad nodded. "That's fair." Before he left, he asked if he could call me sometime. Not for money, not for help with anything practical. Just to talk. "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. We started meeting monthly, always at neutral locations, always for limited time periods. Dad was different in these conversations. Quieter, more thoughtful. He listened when I talked about my work, my relationship with Michael, my life in general. He didn't ask for anything beyond my time. We talked about books we'd read, the garden he was starting on his apartment building's rooftop, his therapy sessions, conversations I'd never had with him before about ideas and experiences rather than problems that needed solving. 3 months into our regular coffee dates, I got an email from Mom. The subject line was simple. "From your mother. Erica, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, I know I said things the last time we spoke that were hurtful and unfair. Your father has been going to therapy and has been encouraging me to do the same. I finally started seeing someone last month. It's been difficult. Dr. Rodriguez has been helping me understand some patterns in my behavior that I never recognized before. I'm not ready to make excuses or ask for forgiveness, but I'm starting to understand that I hurt you. Badly, repeatedly, for years. I would like to try to repair our relationship if you're willing. Dr. Rodriguez suggested family therapy. I understand if you're not interested, but I hope you'll consider it. I miss my daughter. Love, Mom. I read the email 3 times before calling Jasmine. What do you think? I asked after reading it to her. What do you think? I think I'm scared. What if this is just another manipulation? What if they're just trying to get back into my life so they can start asking for things again? And what if it's genuine? Then I might get something I thought I'd lost forever, which is a family that actually sees me. I agreed to family therapy with both of them. Dr. Rodriguez had a practice in Manhattan, and we met every other week for 3 months. The sessions were brutal, honest in a way our family had never been honest before. In the 3rd session, Mom finally admitted that she'd always seen me as more mature, more capable, less needy than Danny. I told myself it was a compliment, she said, that I was respecting your independence. But independence and neglect aren't the same thing, Dr. Rodriguez pointed out. I know that now. What did it feel like, Erica, to be treated as the mature one from such a young age? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Lonely, I said. It felt like I had to earn love by being useful, like I mattered only as much as I could provide. Mom started crying. That wasn't what I intended. But it was the effect, I said. I needed to matter as more than a bank account. I needed to be seen as your daughter, not just as the reliable one who could handle whatever you couldn't. I see that now, Mom said through her tears. I see how wrong we were. Dad reached over and took Mom's hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. They were facing this together instead of expecting me to fix it for them. What do you need from us now? Dad asked. I need you to understand that I'm not the family safety net anymore. I need you to understand that I have my own life, my own priorities, my own financial goals. I need you to love me for who I am, not for what I can provide. We do love you, Mom said. We always have. Then show me, without conditions, without emergencies, without expectations. We made progress slowly. Some weeks were better than others. Some sessions ended with tears and understanding others with tension and unresolved anger. But we kept showing up, all 3 of us, trying to build something new from the ruins of what we'd had before. 6 months into therapy, Danny called me. It was the first time we'd spoken since his wedding. Erica, it's Danny. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. It's okay. How are you? Not great, honestly. Alex and I are getting divorced. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. I'm sorry, Danny. That must be really difficult. It is, but that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I need to apologize to you. For what? For everything. For knowing that you were paying for the house and never saying anything. For accepting it as a wedding gift without thinking about what that meant for you. For letting Mom and Dad treat you like our personal bank account while I got to play the creative free spirit. You knew, I knew. Not the details, not how much, but I knew you were helping them financially. And I never questioned it, because it meant I didn't have to step up and help. I let you carry the responsibility, because it was easier for me. This admission hit me harder than I'd expected. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was selfish. Because I liked my life the way it was. Because it was easier to let you be the responsible one while I figured out my passion projects. And now I'm learning to be responsible for myself. Alex's family made it clear from the beginning that they expected me to contribute equally to our life together. When I couldn't, when the lifestyle influencer thing didn't pan out the way I'd hoped, the marriage fell apart. What are you doing now? I got a job, a real job, marketing coordinator at a nonprofit. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. And I'm putting the house up for sale. The house? My house? The house I'd paid for. I know you probably hate that house now, Danny continued, but when it sells, I want to split the proceeds with you. I know it won't make up for what you paid, but it's something. Danny, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. I have to try to make this right. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a real estate agent asking if I'd be interested in listing a property in Westbury. When she gave me the address, I realized it was the house. The owner specifically requested you, she said. He said you'd understand the property better than anyone. I drove out to Long Island that weekend to see the house one more time. Danny met me there, looking more adult than I'd ever seen him. He'd cut his hair, traded his vintage band t-shirts for a button-down shirt and khakis. He looked like someone who went to work every day. You don't have to take the listing if it's too weird, he said. I walked through the rooms I'd paid for, seeing them with new eyes. The living room where I'd sat as a child trying to understand why I got lectures while Danny got cars. The kitchen where I'd overheard my parents planning to give away my inheritance. The bedroom that was supposed to be mine someday. Actually, I said, I think I'll pass this one to a colleague. It's too personal. I understand. But, Danny, thank you for offering to split the proceeds. It means more than you know. It's the right thing to do. I should have done it a long time ago. The house sold within a month. Danny kept his word and split the proceeds with me. It wasn't close to what I'd paid over the years, but it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about acknowledgement. It was about family members finally seeing what they'd taken and trying to make it right. I used my share as a down payment on a second property, a small apartment building in Brooklyn that I could renovate and rent out. Building my own legacy with money that came from the house I'd paid for in a way that honored both what I'd lost and what I'd gained. Michael and I got engaged that fall, not because we needed to prove anything to anyone, but because we wanted to build a life together. A life where we both contributed equally, where love wasn't measured by financial sacrifice, where partnership meant supporting each other's dreams instead of funding someone else's entitlement. The engagement party was small. Jasmine was there, of course, and my coworkers and Michael's family, and some of the women clients who had become friends. My parents came too. They looked proud, but also a little lost, like they were still learning how to celebrate me without needing something from me. Mom approached me during the party while I was standing with Jasmine by the window of my brownstone. "You look happy," she said. "I am happy. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy." It was such a simple statement, but coming from her, it felt like an acknowledgement of something fundamental that had been missing from our relationship for years. "Thank you for not giving up on us," she said, "for going to therapy, for trying to rebuild this. Thank you for being willing to change." It wasn't easy, admitting that we'd been wrong about so many things, but Dr. Rodriguez helped me understand that loving you means supporting your independence, not exploiting it. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Michael and I sat on our couch in our living room in our house, drinking wine and talking about wedding plans. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About your family, about how everything played out." I thought about it, about the house I'd paid for and lost, about the years of feeling invisible, about the family relationships that had been rebuilt from scratch. "No regrets," I said. The house was never the point. The point was being seen, respected, loved not for what I gave, but for who I was. And now I know the difference. I know what real love looks like, what real family feels like. I know that I matter whether I'm useful or not. "You do matter," Michael said. "You matter so much." I leaned against him, looking around the room at the life I'd built for myself. Photos from trips we'd taken together. Books I'd bought because I wanted to read them, not because I was too busy working extra jobs to afford entertainment. Furniture I'd chosen because I liked it, not because it was what I could afford after paying someone else's bills. "I spent so many years thinking that love meant sacrifice," I said. "That family meant giving until it hurt. But real love doesn't require you to disappear. Real love sees you and values you and wants you to flourish. What would you tell someone going through what you went through? I'd tell them that they're not responsible for other people's poor decisions. That being capable doesn't mean being obligated. That saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person with boundaries. And and that sometimes the family you build is more important than the family you're born into. Sometimes you have to save yourself before you can save anyone else. I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, working 3 jobs, emptying her savings account, believing that her worth was measured by her usefulness. She couldn't have imagined this life, this house, this love, this peace, but she would have been proud of how it all turned out. She would have been proud that all her sacrifice and hard work had finally led to something that was truly hers. The house they gave away was never really the point. The point was learning that I deserved to be loved for who I was, not what I could provide. The point was discovering that my value wasn't determined by how much I could give away, but by how much I could keep for myself. The point was coming home to a life that was finally completely, authentically mine. Have you ever been taken advantage of by family? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button for more real-life family drama stories. And remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.